The quiet hum of the restaurant buzzed around me, the clink of silverware and soft chatter fading into the background as I focused on her. Lena sat across from me, her smile soft but radiant. We were about to take the next step. I could feel the weight of the moment, the anticipation curling in my chest. I had dreamt of this, of making her mine in front of everyone, of showing the world that we were together, against all odds. This was the moment, the one I had planned, and yet, somehow, my nerves twisted around my stomach. The light from the chandelier above us flickered, casting a warm glow over her, and for a second, I couldn't help but smile at how lucky I was. She was everything I'd wanted and more. This wasn't just about making an announcement, this was about making a promise. "I think we're ready," I muttered under my breath, almost trying to convince myself as much as her. She caught my eye then, and I saw that familiar warmth in her gaze. The excitement was there, too. This was real. Then, suddenly, her phone buzzed on the table. Her expression shifted instantly, so subtly at first I almost thought I imagined it, but I knew something had changed. Her smile faltered, replaced by a faint unease. I swallowed hard, the words I had been rehearsing suddenly dying in my throat. The world felt like it slowed down, a thick layer of tension settling in the space between us. "I'll be right back," she murmured, quickly standing and walking toward the back of the restaurant, leaving me with the sudden, unsettling feeling that something was off. The air felt thicker now. I tried to hold on to the excitement I'd felt moments ago, but it was slipping through my fingers. I couldn't shake the feeling that the moment we'd been waiting for was crumbling, like sand slipping away with each second. My heart raced. Why had she left so suddenly? Why did she look so uncertain? My eyes flicked toward the door where she had disappeared. My thoughts raced. Was it something I'd done? Had I said something wrong? No, this wasn't like her. I tried to focus, to breathe, but all I could think of was the sharp change in her face, the unease that flickered across her features. And that's when it hit me. There was something she wasn't telling me. Why what? I tried to steady my breathing, but the longer I waited, the heavier the silence around me became. It was impossible to ignore the gnawing feeling growing in my gut. Something wasn't right. When she finally returned, I noticed it immediately. She was trying to act normal, the smile she wore barely masking the distance in her eyes. Something about her was different. Something had shifted while she was gone. Her eyes, once warm and full of affection, now felt like glass. She was here, but not really. She sat down slowly, smoothing her napkin across her lap as if trying to compose herself. I couldn't breathe. The space between us was suddenly too wide. I searched her face, looking for something, anything that could explain the sudden shift. But the more I looked, the more I felt like I was staring at a stranger. There was no longer that connection, that bond we'd built together. 1,000 questions filled my head, but none of them had answers. "Is everything okay?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper, betraying the unease that had settled in my chest. She took a deep breath, her eyes flicking toward the window. "It's complicated," she said softly, not meeting my gaze. My stomach twisted. I could feel the words coming, the ones that would change everything. She wasn't ready to say them, but they were already hanging in the air between us. She hesitated, and I could see her struggling to find the right words. "I've been thinking a lot about us and about him." I froze, my pulse quickening. "What do you mean?" I could barely get the words out, panic creeping into my voice. Her eyes met mine then, but there was no warmth in them now, just cold uncertainty. He confessed again, and this time I accepted him. I couldn't breathe. The room closed in around me. Her words crashed into me like a wave, and all I could do was sit there, numb, as I tried to piece together the shattered reality before me. Everything I thought I knew about her, about us, crumbled away in that moment. I tried to make sense of it, but it didn't fit. It couldn't. "What?" My voice was barely a whisper. "You accepted him?" The words didn't even sound real coming from my mouth. She nodded, looking down, unable to meet my gaze. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I can't deny what's happening." Betrayal burned through me, hot and sharp. I felt my heart crack open, pieces of it falling away with each second. The woman I'd loved, trusted, was gone, and in her place was someone I didn't recognize. I wanted to scream, to beg her to explain, but all I could do was sit there, frozen. How could you? I choked, fighting back tears, my voice barely steady. After everything we've been through? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence screamed louder than any words could. I wanted to run, to escape from the suffocating reality of her betrayal, but I couldn't. I stayed there, staring at her, waiting for her to explain, to make it right. But she didn't. She just sat there, her own heart closed off to me. The world around us seemed to fade, the quiet murmur of the restaurant turning into a distant hum. I was trapped, caught in this nightmare I couldn't wake up from. She cleared her throat, her voice breaking through the silence. I think I need space to think. My chest constricted and I couldn't hold back the flood of emotion any longer. Space? You telling me this now and you need space? My words were harsh, the hurt evident in my voice. I had no idea what I was supposed to do with this, how I was supposed to even look at her anymore. I'm sorry, she whispered, her eyes glossing over with unshed tears. But I wasn't sure if she was sorry for me or for herself. I sat there, staring at her, the weight of her words settling like concrete in my stomach. Everything I thought I knew about love, about us, was gone, and I didn't know what to do next. She had already made her choice, and now I was left to decide what I was going to do with the broken pieces of me. I remember the first time I saw Lena. She was so different from me, so unapologetically ambitious. I was just a regular guy, content with my job, always happy with a simple life. But her presence, it was magnetic. She was a force. A woman who knew exactly what she wanted, and she made everyone around her want to follow. Even me. We met at a conference, me just there to watch, and her leading the discussions. She caught my eye instantly, and for the first time, I felt like I wanted to know more than just the surface of someone. She spoke with such confidence, and it intrigued me. She was strong, sure, but there was warmth in her eyes that pulled me in. I remember the first time we actually spoke. It was casual at first, just a quick exchange about a presentation, but somehow I found myself gravitating toward her. The conversation felt natural, easy, like we'd known each other for years, even though it was only the beginning. The difference in our worlds was glaring, but in those moments it didn't matter. It felt like fate, like I was meant to be here in this very moment with her. We started spending more time together, and slowly I realized just how deeply I was falling for her. It was like every day we learned something new about each other. Our conversations about business and life made me feel like we could build something incredible together. And we did. There was so much trust between us, an unspoken understanding. She believed in me and us. But somewhere along the way, something started to change. I didn't notice it at first. But looking back, there were moments that should have tipped me off. Lena started spending more late nights at the office, her phone constantly buzzing with calls and messages I knew nothing about. I could see the shift in her eyes when I'd try to reach out, to pull her into the world I thought we shared. She was there, but she wasn't really there. Her body was present, but her mind, her heart, was somewhere else. It hit me one night when I asked her if she wanted to watch a movie, just the two of us, something simple. She looked at me, and for a split second, there was nothing in her gaze. Not the warmth I had become so accustomed to, but a coldness, a detachment. She said she was tired, that she had a lot of work to catch up on, and I let it go. But it lingered in the back of my mind. Was she pulling away, or was I just imagining it? The doubts kept building, piece by piece. Was she too focused on her career, too consumed with her image to truly care about me anymore? I started questioning everything. My role in her life, our future. Did she still need me? Or was I just another accessory to her success? Something to make her look better, but not someone she actually loved. I tried to bury those thoughts. Tried to convince myself that it was just a phase, that she was under pressure, that everything would go back to normal. But it didn't. It got worse. It all came crashing down when I saw her name pop up on her phone, an ex's name. The same ex who had never really disappeared from the edges of our life, the one I had been uncomfortable with for as long as we'd been together. Every time his name came up, Lena's eyes would glaze over in a way I couldn't ignore. And then, one night, I heard the conversation. "I've always loved you." His voice was low, almost pleading. And then one night, I heard the conversation I'd had with Stephen with Professor Stobose and sit back and lay on my bed with my floaty pillows and a shirt. Yep, and I know we've both moved on, but I still feel something. I can't shake it. I heard her voice, soft but steady, telling him, I'm not sure what I'm doing right now. I need time. The words hung in the air long after the call ended. Time. Time for what? To figure out if she still wanted me? To decide if he could still win her back? My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. The woman I loved was standing at a crossroads, and I didn't know if I was still part of her journey. I confronted her the next day, and she didn't deny it. It's complicated, she said, her voice thick with uncertainty. I need to figure out what I want. What did that even mean? How could she say that to me after everything we'd built together? My heart sank with the realization that maybe, just maybe, I had never been enough. Maybe I was only ever a stepping stone in her path to something bigger, someone better. I wanted to ask her why, to demand an explanation, but when I looked at her, I saw the distance in her eyes, that coldness I couldn't shake. It was like she was already a million miles away, even though she was sitting right in front of me. I tried to talk to her, but it was like talking to a wall. Every attempt to connect only pushed her further away. She was here, but I wasn't sure I still had her. I wasn't sure I ever had her the way I thought I did. And then it came, the moment I had feared but never prepared for. I need space, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I think we need time apart. Time apart? I was stunned. Time apart meant the beginning of the end, didn't it? What could be more final than those words? I felt the world around me start to collapse, my whole life with her disintegrating in front of me. I wanted to scream, to beg her to stay, to fix everything, but I couldn't. I was trapped in this emotional maze, trying to find a way out, but I didn't know where to go. My heart was a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, confusion, hurt, anger, all of it mixed into one overwhelming force, and I couldn't stop it. Is this it? I asked, my voice breaking. Are you really going to leave me? She didn't answer right away, her eyes flickering with something. Guilt, maybe? Or pity? I just don't know anymore, she said quietly. I felt the ground fall away beneath me, and all I could do was stand there, lost, my mind 1,000 miles away from where I had been just moments before. Was this the end of everything? Or was there still a chance? But deep down, I knew the truth. The woman I had loved was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I was at a crossroads with no idea which direction would bring me peace. Now, do I fight for what we had, or do I walk away, accepting the painful truth that I was never enough for her? I walked into our living room, and she was sitting there, waiting. Her posture was too perfect, too composed, like she'd rehearsed for this moment. But I couldn't wait any longer. My blood was boiling, and every step toward her felt like a countdown to an explosion. Blina, I started, my voice low but sharp. We need to talk. She didn't flinch, didn't even look up from the coffee table. She just nodded, her fingers idly playing with the edge of her glass. I couldn't hold it in any longer. You've been distant, and now this thing with your ex. You're breaking my trust, Lena. I don't even recognize you anymore. Her eyes flickered to mine, and I saw a hint of something. Guilt, maybe. But she didn't speak. I took a deep breath, forcing the words through clenched teeth. You used me, didn't you? All this time, I was just a tool for your image. Something to make it look like you had it all together, like you had love. But the truth is, you don't care about me. You never did. She flinched at that, but still said nothing. The silence was deafening, suffocating. I couldn't stand it any longer. Did you think I wouldn't notice? You've been so busy, so wrapped up in your career, in him, your ex. He was always there, wasn't he? All these years, and you've been using me to hide the cracks in your perfect life. Finally, she spoke. It's not that simple, Alex. It's not just about him. Then what is it about? I shot back, my voice rising. Is it about control? About you being scared of losing everything you've built? Because that's what this is, isn't it? You never wanted love. You just wanted stability. You needed to keep everything perfect, even if it meant keeping me around to fill the space. She stood up now, but she wasn't facing me. She was looking out the window, as if searching for something beyond the glass. Her voice was shaky when she spoke again. I never meant to hurt you. But the words felt empty. Well, you did. You've hurt me in ways I can't even explain. I've been here, giving you everything. My love, My loyalty, and for what? To be your backup plan? To make sure your life looked complete when it was anything but? I saw her swallow, her hands trembling slightly. She couldn't look at me, and that hurt more than anything else. I didn't plan for this to happen. I never wanted it to be like this. I took a step closer, desperate for something, anything that could make sense of all this. You didn't plan for it? You've been planning this entire relationship for your own benefit. You wanted to keep him as a security blanket, and I was just an accessory. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, as if trying to maintain control. It's not about him, Alex. It's about me. What I need. Right now, I need space to think. I felt my stomach drop. Space? After everything? Space? My voice cracked and I had to fight to keep my composure. What does that even mean? What do you need time for, Lena? To figure out if you still want me in your life? To decide if I'm worth holding on to? She didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth was hitting me like a ton of bricks. I had been a part of her life, sure, but only the part that fit her narrative. I was never the center of it. I had been just a character in her story, nothing more. My love, my dedication, it wasn't enough. It was never enough. You've been lying to me this entire time, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I've been holding on to this idea that we were a team, that we were partners, but it's all been a lie. You've been playing me, and I've been too blind to see it. For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of my own breathing. I wanted to lash out, to scream, but the air felt thick with defeat. She didn't respond. She couldn't. The realization hit me like a shockwave, and suddenly, I understood everything. Her actions, her decisions. They were never about me. They were about her. She was scared of losing control over everything she had worked for. Her career, her image, her stability, and I had been a convenient part of that. Nothing more. The truth was bitter. It was suffocating, and it tore me apart. All this time, I had been trying to make our love work, trying to fit myself into her world, but I was never meant to fit. I was just the placeholder in her perfect, curated life. I took a step back, my heart heavy, like it was sinking. I thought you loved me, Lena, but I was wrong. I've been nothing but a backup plan in your perfect world. I could see the guilt in her eyes now, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. The silence between us stretched on, unbearable and final. In that moment, I felt something inside me break. All the illusions, all the hope I had held on to, shattered. I wasn't part of her life in any real way. I was just a character she had kept around when it suited her, and I wasn't willing to keep playing that role. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe, but I knew what I had to do. I had to let go. I couldn't keep begging for scraps of love when she had nothing left to give. I need to go, I said quietly, my voice hoarse. I need to get out of here. Lena didn't stop me. She didn't even try. I left, stepping out into the cold night air, feeling the weight of everything I had lost. But as I walked away, something inside me began to shift. The ache was still there, but it was no longer the suffocating, desperate kind. It was the kind that said I was finally free. Free from the lies. Free from the illusion of a love that had never existed. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I could breathe again. I stood there, looking at the door that had once felt like the entrance to everything I thought I wanted. My mind was a blur filled with chaos and confusion, but there was one thing that felt certain. I couldn't go back. Not to her, not to that life. It was like a dam breaking, a flood of emotions pouring out, but this time, it wasn't anger, it wasn't sadness either. It was clarity. For so long, I had been trapped in this cycle, clinging to the hope that things would change, that she would change, but now I saw it all for what it really was. I had been second to her, a placeholder, an accessory to the life she'd built for herself. She never saw me as her partner. I was just a means to an end. I wasn't going to let that be my story anymore. My hands were shaking, my breath unsteady, but I didn't look back as I grabbed my things. I knew what I had to do. The thought of walking away from her, of severing those ties, used to terrify me. The loneliness, the uncertainty, it all felt so overwhelming, but now it felt like freedom. I wasn't scared anymore. I didn't need her. I didn't need her approval or her love. I didn't need to be the one she turned to when it suited her. I'd spent so long bending myself to fit into her world, but no more. I deserved more than that. I deserved to be seen, to be loved in a way that was real, not part of some game she played to maintain her image. I closed the door behind me, my heart pounding in my chest. But it wasn't out of fear. It was a sense of liberation, of reclaiming something I had lost, myself. I walked away, leaving the life I had built with her behind, and in that moment I felt lighter than I had in years. It wasn't easy, though. As the days passed, I felt the weight of it, the pain of what I was letting go of, the dreams, the hopes, the love I had believed was real. I mourned it. But in the silence that followed, I started to understand something important. I wasn't broken. I wasn't worthless because she didn't want me. I began to see the cracks in our relationship, the manipulation, the ways she had kept me on a leash, never fully committing, never fully loving. I had given everything to her, and she had used it against me. But now, I knew that the love I needed to find had to come from me, not from her. There were moments when I missed her. The quiet nights we spent together, the way her presence had felt like home. But I also realized that those moments weren't real. They were just pieces of a life that I had created in my mind, a life that had never existed outside of my desperate need for her to validate me. Time passed, and I started to rebuild. It wasn't immediate, it wasn't perfect, but slowly, I began to find myself again. I started doing things I had forgotten about, things I used to love. I spent more time with friends, and for the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to just be, without worrying about how I was perceived, without needing her to approve. And then out of nowhere, I heard the news. Her ex, the man she had left me for, he wasn't after her for love. No, his intentions had always been clear. He had used her, just like she had used me. And now the truth was out. The betrayal didn't hit me like it used to. In some twisted way, I felt vindicated. The man she thought would give her what I couldn't had always been after something else. It was never about her. It was about control, about his own ambitions. The revelation sent shockwaves through the people around her, and I knew it was hitting her hard. In a cruel twist of fate, she had been used, manipulated, just as I had. The difference was, she had no one to turn to now. The man she had chosen over me wasn't going to be there to pick up the pieces. And I wasn't going to be there to comfort her. I could almost hear the hollow emptiness in her voice when she reached out to me. Her choices had led her here, to a life that was nothing more than a shadow of what she had hoped for. She had manipulated me, lied to me, and used me for her own benefit, but now, the same things were being done to her. She didn't deserve my sympathy. She didn't deserve my forgiveness. Not anymore. And I felt nothing. The anger, the resentment, they were gone. What remained was something simpler. Peace. I thought of her often during those days. I wondered if she had learned anything, if the pain was enough for her to change. But it didn't matter. It was too late for her. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. The consequences of her indecision, of her emotional manipulation, were all around her. She had chased control, validation, and the image of a perfect life, and in the end, she was left with nothing but the consequences. I thought back to the life I had with her, the person I had been when I was with her, and I realized he wasn't me. That person was lost in a haze of need, of insecurity, of a desperation for approval. But I had found my way back to myself. I had shed the version of me that was shaped by her, and I had become someone new. Someone stronger, someone who didn't need her to feel whole. There was still pain, I still missed her at times, but now I saw that it wasn't the love I missed. It was the idea of it, the illusion. And the truth was, I had always been enough. I stood on my own now, no longer tethered to the past. I had my life back. I was free, the future was wide open, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid.